Thanks for watching. Today's video we're going to be exchanging an old Polaris pressure cleaner booster pump for a brand new one. Now, as with any repair, if you're not really sure what you're doing, please hire a pool professional. We are dealing with electricity here after all. However, I know that if you're watching this video, you're probably a do-it-yourself kind of person. So come join me. I'm going to give you a few tips along the way, and hopefully you can learn a few things. I've done this a few hundred times over the years. So first things first, turn off the electricity at the breaker just so nobody gets shocked here. Alright, so the very first thing I'm doing here is I'm going to spin the nut off of the hose fitting, and then I'm going to spin the hose fitting itself. Now, the reason I'm doing this is just to skip the step of removing the hose from the hose fitting, because sometimes when they get old, they get very stiff and they don't want to come off very easy. So we're just going to go ahead and skip over that step. So I'm going to loosen it up with the hose still attached, and then this will allow the bottom part of the hose fitting there to just spin inside of the hose, and that way you don't have to remove it. So next thing I'm going to do is try to get into the back of the motor here to disconnect the power. First, I'm going to go ahead and take off the bond wire. Then I'm going to loosen up the conduit. This one's got a nice duct tape cover on it, which made it really easy to get into. So you see the back of the motor here. I went ahead and took off the front hose just to make it easier to stand up on the front like that. There's not a whole lot of room to get to the back of this pump where it's sitting at, so this makes it a lot easier to get to, and so you guys can see everything also. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the wires back here. You're going to have 3 wires. This one's rigged up for 220, so I have a ground wire and then I have 2 hot wires. So once I loosen those wires up from the pegs, you can go ahead and pull those out. Now you should only need a couple of nut drivers for this. I believe maybe a 1/4 inch and a 5/16, maybe an 11 mil metric. But that's pretty much it. Just loosen those up, pull the wires out, and now your pump is free. Let's go ahead and check out the new pump and see what comes along with it. As you see, it comes with a nice new hose. Definitely recommend using that new hose. Even if you think your old hose still looks okay, just go ahead and swap it out because they get really super stiff over time. So look how nice and shiny black that is. No duct tape on the top. That's always a plus. You don't want to find that when it comes out of the box. So first thing I'm going to do here is get the fittings that come with the hose. These are brand new fittings that come with it. You're going to wrap Teflon tape around it. I don't know the magic number. The internet says 4 wraps. Sometimes I'll go 5 or 6 depending on what I'm working with. Never really had a problem. But don't go too much more than that, because if you roll it a bunch of times, then it will be too thick and it could crack that plastic when you're screwing it in. And also, you don't need to crank down all the way. Just get it nice and snug. You can see I'm leaving a little bit of blue here. That's some new Blue Monster Teflon tape that I don't normally use. It's very awkward in the hand. I don't like that big roll. I like the small rolls better. So it looks like I'm really hammering down on that thing, but not really. I'm just getting it nice and snug. So now when I come and set it in place over here, I'm going to get the other hose fittings set up. Now these you want to be extra careful with, because if anything's going to crack, it's going to be these right here for sure. So now I'm going to go ahead and take off the back panel of the new pump. We're going to get our we're going to take the conduit off of the old one and get it set up on the new one. And we're going to pull our wires through. Now sometimes this can be the most difficult part of the whole job, honestly, is just getting the wires back through sometimes, especially if you have connectors on it already like this. Now if you don't have connectors on the end of your wires and it's just a straight wire, that's okay. You just have to loosen up the nuts in here, wrap the wire around the peg, and then tighten the nuts back down. Make sure you go around it clockwise. That way when you are tightening the nuts back up, it'll pull the wire into itself and not push it out. I got lucky on this and it already had some spade connectors on it, so it was pretty easy to wire this one up. But some of them are not as easy. Just make sure when you are wiring the back up here that you don't have any wires that are too close to each other or touching each other, or even when I put the back plate back on, you don't want wires touching the back plate. Basically, just give everything enough breathing room. And you see these just kind of connect right onto the terminal. Just plug right on. This was pretty easy one. They're not always this easy. Yours is probably going to be more difficult, just so you know. Alright, so now I'm going to put the back plate back on. Once again, make sure there's no wires touching it. You get this thing on there as good as you can, because this is what's going to keep the water from getting in there. So make sure you have that little piece of foam in there correctly and get it set correctly and tightened down, and then you won't have to worry about moisture and water getting in there. So now I'm going to go ahead and reconnect reconnect the bond wire into the new terminal. You just need a flathead screwdriver for that. And now pretty much the last thing left is to go ahead and hook these hoses back up. Now, like I said, be very careful when you're tightening these up into that old PVC pipe. If it's an older pipe, then there's a good chance you could split it if you crank too much, or if you put too much Teflon on there. Just use some caution. So now that I got them all tightened up, I'm going to take the nuts off of the hose adapters and put the nut over the hose first, and then put the hose on there. And you see, even a brand new hose can be a pain in the ass to get on sometimes. And this was actually a fairly warm day, so you can imagine if you're trying to do this on a cold day when it's like 60, 50 degrees outside, it'd probably be very difficult to get that hose on there. Good thing we're in Florida here, and even in the winter time it's 70 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead, the hose they give you, it's probably good to cut it in half usually. Sometimes you might have to measure a little differently. This one worked out about half and half, so it was good. If you'll notice, the front side of the Polaris pump is where the water is coming from. So that needs to go to the part of the pool that you're going to get the water from. And the top of the Polaris pump is where the water shoots out of, and that's generally going to go into its own pipe. You can't see it very good, but this one's actually got a pipe labeled cleaner on it down there at the bottom of the screen. So that shoots directly back to the pool. So you see, this one does not want to go on very well, and I'm getting a little frustrated here. I'm making some faces. So I got to go ahead and cut that end of it off, because it did not want to go on there. So get rid of that. Now it should go on. Yeah, check that out. Alright, so now we can tighten up the nuts on that. So that is the hose going into the Polaris pump. That's getting the water from the pool system. And the pipe on top is going out back to the pool. I'm just going to measure it real quick, make sure it fits. Then I'm going to put the nuts back on the hose and go ahead and crank this on there. Now I will say the Polaris pressure cleaner is still my favorite pool cleaner. Even with all the new robotic cleaners that are out there, I still think this one is the best in my opinion. It's just built for longevity. Like, we have some that are 15, 20 years old, still work great. I don't know of any robot that can say that. They usually get about a couple of years and then it's time to replace it. But the reason I like these Polaris pumps and the Polaris head that goes along with this pump is because you can actually fix it when something goes wrong. And that's how you're able to get years and years out of it. So still my favorite. Even with the new robots out, I still love you, Polaris. Alright, so I'm going to finish up by just cranking these down, making sure they're nice and snug. Again, with all of these, you don't gotta kill it. Just get it snug. I feel like I said snug about 30 times in this video. Alright, so that's about it. As you can see, we have the new pump hooked up, ready to go. We're going to go ahead and fire it up and make sure it works. And there she goes. Alright guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Please come back for the next one. See you guys later.